welcome to everybody, and we say namaste. We invite you to come in and into our realm and experience. And I would also like to say good evening, comrades. We have now arrived. We have become from the lowest form to the highest form in the flip of a switch. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. It's not important to you. If you do, then you know exactly what I'm saying. So what an amazing time that we're living in, man. So much spiritual stuff going on. It ain't even funny. It's just like everywhere. And so we have an amazing opportunity. I did want to warn and caution everyone that with the full moon and the stuff that's going on, I know that maybe some of you may not understand, or maybe you don't look at that stuff, or it's not important or whatever. But there's we go through spells, and the more that you become conscious of them, the more you become conscious of them. And so I will simply say this: if you know what I'm talking about, then you already probably understand what I'm saying about the power that is being exerted. But what I'd like to encourage you to do is be very careful about your inner self right now, because the picture comes off as that whatever state that you're in. So if you are in inner chaos, your inner chaos is going to be amplified massively. And if you're in inner peace, then that works on the other side. Your inner peace also is going to be amplified. So I just would say, if you don't do anything else but just, sit for 10 minutes in a bedroom on a bed and be quiet, and breathe and do whatever you do or don't do, and try to calm your inner self in peace. And of course it is going to matter for the next 3 or 4 days. There's going to be a kind of an overwhelming power. There's a lot of things going on in the world and outside of the world that are affecting us. There's planets that are lining up, and we have all kinds of just a massive stuff that's happening. And of course, if you just, if you don't pay attention, then you're oblivious to it and just being led by whatever. So we're going to look at a little something tonight that she talks about, because she's going to broach for the first time. It's been really crazy meeting Helena and finding out that many of the things that I've said have come from the divine. And I don't know if what you may or may not know about pistis and the functioning of that. I'm trying to share as quickly as I can, but this is such a long journey. And so there may be things, but just suffice to say that many people are wandering, and it's a very difficult state in many situations. So we're going to find out tonight the battle she was struggling with. The problem is the acceptance of, there's a lot of acceptance. You could start with the acceptance that Yeshua wasn't at all the Jesus of the Bible. You could start with the fact that every scholar that's ever read Paul or Jesus' writings have both come to the same concept, that they had to be mystical, that they were definitely not Christian. And so then you have to deal with the reality that there was knowledge that we still do not possess that was possessed on this earth long before us. And so, we've been so prisonized and forced into the belief of one perception, and that this is history, and this is how things were, and this is what good and bad and right and wrong and up and down, and in many cases none of that stuff is true. It's only a perception of you experiencing from the conscious state. And so I don't know if you've encountered that or not, but the reality that we all are consciousness, but that sounds really good, but it's more than that by far. And so if it's important, you'll find out, and if it's not, you won't. So we're going to pick up where we left off. She's still dealing and struggling, and I will tell you that all of this is to establish that there was much more before this society that we call reality ever even existed. In fact, there was a lot more even before the time that Yeshua manifested. And since it wasn't about him, it was about what he brought and what he gave to mankind. Many of you may already know that, but many don't. Had nothing to do with Yeshua. So we'll continue on. So she writes, we'll pick up on page 34 where we left off last week. How subject even a scientific opinion is to error. We may see, if we only compare the several articles on spiritual phenomena from the able pen of that gentleman, which appeared from 1870 to 1875, in one of the first we read, the increased employment of scientific methods will promote exact observations and great love of truths among inquirers, and will produce a race of observers who will drive the worthless residuum of spiritualism hence into the unknown limbo of magic and necromancy. Sounds just like what your preacher would have said to you, maybe in different words. And in 1875, we read over his signature minute and most interesting descriptions of the materialized spirit, Katie King. Well, I get the feeling this was quite known, at least from in the UK, which is infinitely more spiritual than we are here. That's why you had, a large number of the mystical rock bands came from England, and that's why you had Aleister Crowley, who still reverberates around the world, and yet for all that people deemed him to be, most assuredly from the Christians, a demon worshiper, he functioned in the spirit realm. Well, you have to ask yourself, if Jesus came to town, would they call him Aleister Crowley? And the answer to the question is yes, emphatically they would. Because he came and he did things that we have to deem as being supernatural, and yet they were natural. The problem is they're not natural to us. The problem that separates us from him is that he functioned because of his total belief in what his reality was, and you function totally in what your reality is. And they're not the same reality. And so you're never going to cross his timeline. You're never going to heal the sick. You're never going to raise the dead. You're never going to touch the blind eyes. You're never going to fix the leprosy until you begin to have his reality. And since most people aren't looking for it, I'm pretty sure that the people that aren't looking for it will never find it. Every now and then, the universe allows, the force that exists allows people for times and seasons, and that's what Katie King is about. Just so you know, in the 1800s, there was a huge spiritual movement. In the 1930s, there was a huge spiritual movement. In the 1950s, there was a huge spiritual movement. In the 1960s, there was a huge spiritual movement. And in 2025, there is the greatest spiritual movement that's going on. And though you can't see it because of the chaos, be very careful, but be very aware and be very comforted that the chaos has to happen. It's part of the experience, friends. We're here. We're going to watch more chaos in this country than you've heard of in this country since the very beginning of its founding, including fighting King George. You're seeing it pop up and it manifest, and I've heard many times people ask questions like, where the hell did these people's minds go that they could have thoughts like this and that they could want this, and it is the manifestation that Edgar Cayce, Helena Blavatsky, Dolores Cannon, many other mystics that came before us told us was going to come. It is the rebirth, but here's the downside. If you get the death card in Tarot, the death card means death to something, but it's also, and more importantly, it's the beginning. And so the chaos that we're going to live through and are living through now is necessary, for the dying of one thing brings the birth of something else. And the birth of something else is not going to look like what you think reality is. And that's going to be one of the hardest parts for people, because they've lived their whole life thinking that all of this that they deem to be important was reality. And the truth is that it's nothing but a delusion. That's all. It just is something that is concocted in your mind. And that plays out on many levels for maybe some of you who've heard those words and you can't quite put them together. There is the mystical manifestation side of that, that is to say, the things that are being drawn from the unseen. As Yeshua talks, he makes it very clear that there is a seen realm, but there is also an unseen realm. And so your behavior, your thoughts, the things that go on inside of you, the simple thoughts you have when you're working or when you're doing something and you're mindlessly focused on something else, and your mind just runs like a teal wheel, and you have no picture that all of that is not just wasted time. It's actually creation time. And that's why so many people have the things. And it's not about having possessions. That doesn't make you spiritually strong because you have a lot of whatever it is that you deem important. What makes you strong is when you understand those things and you begin to get into alignment with the force. And when you begin to do that, then things work, but it's not what we think that things working means. That is to say, if you hear people talk about abundance, if you'll talk with them long enough, eventually you'll find out that we make it all the way back to how much money they have. It has nothing to do, see, abundance of peace and abundance of love and abundance of mercy and abundance of kindness. None of those things play into anybody's picture. They want manifestation of abundance in our society means I have lots of money. And to be quite honest with you, in many cases, the universe will not give you that because it's what you want. I'll show you this principle in action. When Solomon was given an opportunity, the son of the king who was going to be the king of a whole nation, and when Solomon was brought before the force, of course they told you it was Yahweh and God, it's all BS. He went in front of the force in the spirit realm. He moved into a different state, which he functioned in constantly. He also, if he came today, would be called a witch doctor. And so Solomon was given an opportunity to expose the true him, the higher self, if you would. And the higher self of Solomon, contrary to what Christianity has taught and what they have ruined people's minds to believe, the higher consciousness of Solomon was to bless people. And he proved that. And when he proved that, the universe honored that and said, because you have done this, please, dear one, open your mind up and wake up today. It's highly possible that many of the things that we do not possess because we will not possess the things that Source desires for us to possess. So we continue on our mindless journeys, our mindless lives, our mindless walks, only thinking about material things, and Source could care less about material things. And so that's the problem. Source is over here doing his thing, and you're over here doing your thing. And you won't interact with him, and he doesn't interact with you. As a general rule of thumb, what you are inside will determine whether you connect with the force. And so in this situation, though, I wanted to say all of that because Katie was a manifestation that emanated to a scientific world who did not believe in the spirit realm. Okay? And she started coming through in the middle of a really, really significant time period. The time that Helena and all that Helena shared and learned and taught set the stage for all of the others. I listen to doctrine constantly, and every bit of it, although most is corrupt, it all emanates from Helena Blavatsky's words that have been twisted. That's how they make the doctrines that you call New Age spiritualism, is by taking a very small piece of what she said and manipulating it. Well, that's exactly what Christianity did. So to be honest with you, in many cases, most of this New Age crap most of it is nothing but a corruption of the ancient truth, yet again, that existed 10,000 years ago. And so every now and then the universe, the force comes through and likes to slap people in the face because they have no response to it. Listen to it. It says it is hardly possible to suppose that Mr. Crooks could be under electrobiological influence or hallucination for 2 or 3 consecutive years. So this noted scientist, Mr. Crooks, was a well-known scientist at the time. He hated theosophy. He hated spiritualism. It was all fake. It was all not true. There were no spirits, There was no reincarnation. Just the same old droll, worn-out Christian BS. And all of a sudden, this thing starts manifesting to him in a quite profound way. Well, what she's saying here is that for 2 or 3 years, this thing has been manifesting to this guy who is one of the preeminent scientists in the world that is standing up telling everybody that this phenomena is fake. And yet it starts manifesting to him. It's just the universe showing. If you can begin to enlighten and awaken, you will begin to recognize that all of these things that I'm sharing with you about perception and intelligence and intellect and all of those things are spirit forces. That's why we don't have them. It's actually a picture of the spiritual state of humanity at this time. It's not tied to an individual, because there are many individuals in society that are not a part of that. But it is a picture of society as a whole. The vote last night and what happened in the United States of America is a spiritual picture of the whole, and the universe has that and is going to use that to correct humanity. Okay? Don't you doubt it a second. There are many, many millions of people that are going to suffer horribly and needlessly because of what happened last night. And Source is aware of it already. And so we like to be told that everything's going to be wonderful, peachy, and kind. And if somebody continues to carry that lie, which there are many that there are many that are prophesying and channeling demons, archons, if you would. It's not true. It's never going to be true. It's always been proven to be a lie. Edgar Cayce, at the end of his career, just about quit giving readings, and he said, the Akashic record lies to me. Well, that's a hell of a thing after 14,000 manifestations of words that came from the Akashic record. You need to be scared, friends, and I don't mean scared in the negative sense. I mean you need to be scared into reality. Not your illusion, but reality. Nothing is what you think it is. Nothing. And so it is hardly possible to suppose that Mr. Crooks could be under electrobiological influence. She's talking about shock therapy or hallucination. She's talking about at this point in the 1800s, they were already playing with hallucinogenic drugs to cause people to go into trances and to visit things, which is all the CIA did, is picked up their knowledge and put it into the LSD movement in the early 50s. Okay? All of it it's all the same stuff. It just goes over the course of ages. For 2 or 3 consecutive years, the Spirit appeared in his own house, in his library, under the most crucial test, and was seen, felt, and heard by hundreds of persons. So it's not like this is something that happened to him, and so he can go and lie to people. This was something that began to happen, and it continued for multiple years, and hundreds of people saw Katie and heard Katie. And so, Mr. Crooks denies that he ever took Katie King for a disembodied spirit. So it could never anything, whatever the reason, and I don't know if it's because of the prison that we've been in Christianity, which is an Archon prison, and we've been in there and it is the picture of the metaphoric of the cave, that as long as you stay in the cave, everything stays the same. But the minute you walk out, you all of a sudden immediately see that nothing that you thought was true in the cave really is true. And friends, that's where we are in society. That book was absolutely a picture of the spirit world. And so he says it couldn't have been a human that had died and a spirit that came back. It had to be something else. And so it could never be for a disembodied spirit. What was it then? If it was not Florence Cook, and his word is our sufficient guarantee for it, then it was either the spirit of one who had lived on earth, or one of those that come directly under the sixth theory of the eighth the eminent scientist offers to the public choice. It must have been one of the classes named fairies or kobolds or gnomes or elves or goblins or a puck. Yes, Katie King must have been a fairy, a Tashiana, for to a fairy only could be applied with propriety the following poetic effusion which Mr. Crook quotes in describing this wonderful spirit. So this is a non-believer who refuses to admit that this could be the spirit of a human that actually existed. And it's really beautiful if you'll read it or think about it. He says, round her she made an atmosphere of life. Now this is a not believer in this stuff. Round her she made an atmosphere of life. The very air seemed lighter from her eyes. They were so soft and beautiful and rife. With all we can imagine of the skies, her overpowering presence makes you feel it would not be idolatry to kneel. Wow. So on a non-believer, this must have been a pretty dominant, powerful force that was functioning with him to make him write those words. I think they're absolutely beautiful myself. And thus after having written in 1870 his severe sentence against spiritualism and magic, after saying that even at the moment he believed the whole affair a superstition or at least an unexplained trick, a delusion of the senses, Mr. Crooks in 1875 closes his letter with the following memorable words. To imagine, I say, the Katie King of the last 3 years to be the result of impostor does more violence to one's reason and common sense than to believe her to be what she affirms herself to be, which is the spirit of a human that has left. That's what she told him she was. She was a person that had lived here, and her spirit came back, sent by force for the purpose of revealing that this is true. And so I don't know about you, but it has quite powerful connotations to the reality that a believer was so moved by this thing over the course of 3 years' time. And I often wish that Source, and I know that Source does what's right, and I just wish that oftentimes we would see more of these manifestations that get publicly. That used to be done a lot more. Many of these spirit people have been put under scientific test and proven that what they do is true and real. And they're still doing those tests, but nobody ever hears about them. And so he said, and thus after having written in 1870 his severe sentence against spiritualism and magic, after saying that even at the moment he believed the whole affair a superstition or at least an unexplained trick, a delusion of your senses, Mr. Crooks in 1875, 5 years later, closes his letter with the following memorable words. To imagine, I say, the Katie King of the last 3 years to be the result of an imposture does more violence to one's reason and common sense than to believe her to be what she affirms herself. This last remark, moreover, conclusively proves that notwithstanding Mr. Crook's full conviction that the somebody called herself Katie King was neither the medium nor the Confederate, but on the contrary, an unknown force in nature which, like love, laughs at locksmiths, that hitherto unrecognized form of force, albeit, had become with him not a matter of opinion, but of absolute knowledge. The eminent investigator still did not abandon to the last his skeptical attitude towards the question. In short, he firmly believes in the phenomena, but could not accept the idea of its being a human spirit of a departed somebody. It seems to us that as far as public prejudices go, Mr. Crook solves one mystery by creating a still deeper one. The obscurum per obscurius, in other words, rejecting the worthless residuum of spiritualism. The courageous scientific fearlessly plunges into his own unknown limbo of magic and necromancy. The recognized laws of physical science account for but a few of the more objective of the so-called spiritual phenomena, while proving the reality of certain visible effects of an unknown force. They have not thus far enabled scientists to control at will even this portion of the phenomena. The truth is that the professors had not yet discovered the necessary conditions of their occurrence. They must go as deeply into the study of the triple nature of man. You didn't realize that, right? That you are an emanation in fullness of the mother, father, child. Physiological, psychological, and divine. As did their predecessors, the magicians, the theurgists, and the thaumaturgists of the old. Until the present moment, even those who have investigated the phenomena as thoroughly and impartially as Mr. Crook's have set aside the cause as something not to be discovered now, if ever. They have troubled themselves no more about that than about the five cause of the cosmic phenomena of the correlation of forces, whose endless effects they are at such pains to observe and classify. Their course has been as unwise as that of man who would attempt to discover the sources of a river by exploring towards its mouth. It has so narrowed their views of the possibilities of natural law that very simple forms of occult phenomena have necessitated their denial that they can occur unless miracles are possible. And this being a scientific absurdity, the result has been that physical science has laterally been losing prestige. If scientists have studied the so-called miracles instead of denying them, many secret laws of nature comprehended by the ancients would have been again discovered. Conviction, says Bacon, comes not through arguments, but through experiments. And so the ancients were always distinguished, especially the Chaldean astrologers and the Magians, who, just so that you know, the three mages, the three wise men, it would blow some of your mind to find out the three mystics who came from Chaldee to see Yeshua did not come to see Yeshua because he was the savior of the world. They came to see him because he was something that was significant in the spirit realm. He didn't come to save the world. He actually came to restore Sophia. And you'll find that out as we go along. He came to restore wisdom, ancient wisdom. And that was what his whole journey was. Had nothing to do with saving you. That was all created. And so, the ancients were always distinguished, especially the Chaldean astrologers and Magians, for their ardent love and pursuit of knowledge in every branch of science. They tried to penetrate the secrets of nature in the same way as our modern naturalists, and by the only method by which this object can be attained, namely, by experimental researches and reason. And so here's a piece for you guys. You'll never experience anything that Yeshua ever said unless you experience the things that Yeshua also did. When you hear things, silly little things like saying and you laugh at it, you condemn yourself. When you say, well, I don't want to meditate, then you cut yourself off from the flow of the universe. The problem, and that's why the many spirit forces out there are constantly talking that the split that's going on right now, and it's happening in our society in the physical realm, but that's a manifestation. Please try to remember inside of yourself that whatever you're seeing happen in this physical world is nothing but the mirror of what's happening in the spirit world. You have to remember that concept. As above, so below. What is going on here is what is going on in the spirit realm right now. And there is a purging of the earth. The earth is freaking out. There's all kinds of things that are happening all over this planet that are unheard of. Those were talked about, dear one, in the Revelation, the Apocalypse, when he talks about all of the weird things that are going to happen. They're just simply talking spiritual truths. It's not like all of a sudden this is going to be something that is coming. Is it a death? Yes. Is it possibly a destruction? Maybe in more ways than we have any clue of. If you listen to Edgar Cayce, nothing is ever going to be the same. There is going to be a day when you wake up and the world you know no longer exists. It is you. Most of us will see that before it's over with. When that's going to happen is no different than when John spoke the same words in his day. But it is coming. You can be sure of that. The focus of what's going on now, which would have been John and the apostles' focus, is not on the destruction. The destruction was a notice to you that something is coming so that you could stand without being in fear. The notice I send out through the universe is so that people have knowledge and can be empowered when the thing comes to be strong. And if you're living in a realm of fear, then you will never be able to deal with what it is that I'm saying to you. You will run back to your cave and you will hide in your illusion and you will call yourself safe, even if there's no reality to that. Quite important that people understand that. And so they tried to penetrate the secrets of nature in the same way as our modern naturalist, and by the only method by which this object can be attained. Those are huge words coming from a woman of this stature, and maybe you don't know who she is and don't understand who and what and all that she experienced and all that she manifested and all that she brought to fruition to people, and that's a sadness for you. It's available, and I would encourage you to do so, but inevitably you must do what is in your heart. I can't do any more than that. If our modern philosophers cannot apprehend the fact that they penetrated deeper than themselves into the mysteries of the universe, this does not constitute a valid reason why the credit of possessing this knowledge should be denied them or the imputation of superstition laid at their door. Nothing warrants the charge, and every new archaeological discovery militates against the assumption. As chemists, they are unequaled, and in his famous lecture on the lost arts, Wendell Phillips says, the chemistry of the most ancient period had reached a point which we have never even approached. So what if I was to say to you today that we are on the scale of societies that have existed over the last 200 years, we are the lowest on that scale? If you don't understand what's really the truth, because you've been brainwashed to believe we are the pinnacle of humanity, and friends, we are the ghetto of humanity. Okay? That's the reality of this society that you exist in. That's why there are spirit beings who are coming back to help remind people of what they have been in the past, because people are so low that they can't find their way out. And the density and the heaviness and the lie and the deception and the unpureness of heart is just phenomenal in our society. The mass majority of people have no clue who they even are. nor are they really all that interested in finding out. Recipe for doom. But for all of those other 10%, it's going to be a glorious day when this is over with. So, Mr. Wendell Phillips says the chemistry of the most ancient period had reached a point which we have never even approached. They've been lying to you your whole life, friends. They've told you that we are on the technological forefront. We did not make AI. AI existed before this humanity ever existed. AI came from the spirit realm, created by spirit forces and given to us to hurt us. You know, so you can merge with it. So you can take the Neuralink and you can get hooked into the realm and you'll know everything and you'll be lazy and divinely dead. Greg Braden is talking a lot about this when he talks about your divine, that they are programming you to divine death. That's what this is all about, friends. All of these things you need so bad are teaching you to die. And there will be those who will reject them and free themselves from the prison. But the mass majority of spiritual people will never be able to free themselves from the prison because they're in the prison and have no knowledge of it. And so we aren't the most advanced. And it may be difficult for you to do that. We can say that the world as it is now is the most advanced we've seen in our lifetime, but they also brainwashed you that humans have only existed 5,000 years. When in fact, humans have existed way over 300,000 years. What did all those, for 295,000 years, what did all of those people do? You don't have a clue. But you've only been told that whatever they did, to be sure, they were monkeys and they were Neanderthals who, just so you know, if humankind has only been along 5,000 years, the Neanderthal they know have existed over 30,000 years. So those dumb people covered with hair that beat things to death with sticks existed 6 times more than we, Homo sapiens, have existed. That's pretty significant. And so when they brought us in and dropped off Homo sapiens on the earth, the concept was is inevitably they knew that we would interbreed with Neanderthals, and that's exactly what we did, and now we're all Neanderthals. And many of you may not know that that's a reality either. So the secret of the malleable glass, which if supported by one end by its own weight, in 20 hours dwindles down to a fine line that you can curve around your wrist, would be difficult to rediscover in our civilized countries as to fly to the moon. The fabrication of a cup of glass, which was brought by an exile to Rome in the reign of Tiberius. These are actual facts, historical facts he's telling you. There was a time when they possessed a glass that was malleable. And a cup which he dashed upon the marble pavement, and it was not crushed nor broken by the fall, which, as it got dented some, was easily brought back into shape again with a hammer, is a historic fact. That piece of glass manifested and came from Rome in the time of the Emperor Tiberius, and you know nothing about it. We still can't do that. So there's some things going on here. You might actually see that one of the main things is they learned the vehicle, they drove a different car, and that car had understanding about the spirit realm that we simply don't possess. Now, the universe and the force is calling us to possess it. But it's so daunting and it's so much work. That's why the term is stated over and over again to spirit workers Be strong and of a good courage. I've had two people come through from the other realm to me. Funny enough, both very simple statements, both people I highly respect as integrity, and both had the same message to me. Simply be strong and of a good courage. Why? Because I am being prepared for something that is to come. And I know that. Whether you do or not is irrelevant to me. I know that. And so, the cup which he dashed upon the marble pavement, and it was not crushed nor broken by the fall, and which, as it got dented some, was easily brought into shape again with the hammer as a matter of fact. If it is doubted now, it is merely because the moderns cannot do the same. And yet, in Samarkand and some monasteries of Tibet, such cuts and glassware may be found to this day. No, there are persons who claim that they can make the same by virtue of their knowledge of the much ridiculed and ever doubted alkahest, the universal solvent. This agent that Paracelsus and Van Helmont maintained to be a certain fluid in nature, capable of reducing all sublunary bodies as well as homogeneous as mixed into their ens primum of the original matter of which they are composed, or into a uniform, equable, and potable liquor that will unite with water and the juices of all bodies and yet retain its own radical virtues. And if again mixed with itself, will thereby be converted into pure elementary water. What impossibilities prevent our crediting the statement? Why should it not exist? Why should the idea be considered be utopian? Is it again because our modern chemists are unable to produce it? But surely it may be conceived without any great effort of imagination that all bodies must have originally come from some first matter, and that this matter, according to the lessons of astronomy, geology, and physics, must have been a fluid. Why should not gold, of whose genesis our scientists know so little, have been originally a primitive or a basic matter of gold? A ponderous fluid which, says von Helmont, from its own nature or a strong cohesion between its particles acquired afterwards a solid form. There seems to be very little absurdity to believe in a universal ens that resolves all bodies into their ens genitalia. Van Helmont calls it the highest and most successful of all salts, which, having obtained the supreme degree of simplicity, purity, subtlety, enjoys alone the faculty of remaining unchanged and unimpairable by the subjects it works upon, and of the dissolving of the most stubborn and untraceable bodies as stones and gems and glass and earth and sulfur and metals, etc., into red salt, equal in weight to the matter dissolved, and this with as much ease as hot water melts down snow. If it is into this fluid that the makers of malleable glass claimed and now claim that they immerse common glass for several hours to acquire the property of malleability, you have a ready and a palpable proof of such possibilities. A foreign correspondent of the Theosophical Society, a well-known medical practitioner and one who had studied the occult sciences for upwards of 30 years, has succeeded in attaining what he terms the true oil of gold, in other words, the primal element. Chemists and physicists have seen and examined it and were driven to confess that they neither know how it was obtained nor could they do the same. That he desires his name to remain unknown, to not be wondered at, ridicule, and public prejudice are more dangerous sometimes than the Inquisition of old. This Adamic earth is next door neighbor to the alkahest and one of the most important secrets of the alchemist. No Kabbalist will reveal it to the world, for as he expresses it in the well-known jargon, it would explain the eagles of the alchemist and how the eagle's wings are clipped, a secret that it took Thomas Vaughan, Eugenius Philidius 20 years to learn. As the dawn of physical science broke into a glaring daylight, the spiritual sciences merged deeper and deeper into night. And in their turn, they were denied. So now these great masters in psychology are looking upon as ignorant and superstitious ancestors, as mountebanks and jugglers, because forsooth, the sun of modern learning shines day to day so bright, it has become an axiom that the philosophers and men of science of the olden time knew nothing and lived in a night of superstition. But their traducers forgot that the sun today will seem dark by comparison with the luminary of tomorrow. Whether justly or not, as the men of our century think that their ancestors ignorant, so will perhaps their descendants count them for know-nothings. The world moves in cycles, and the coming races will be but the reproductions of races long gone by, as we perhaps are the images of those who lived 100 centuries ago. The time will come when those who now in public slander the Hermetists, but ponder in secret their dust-covered volumes, who plagiarize their ideas, assimilate, and give them out of their own, will receive their dues. Who honestly exclaims PFAF, what man has ever taken more comprehensive views of nature than Paracelsus? He was the bold creator of chemical medicines, the founder of courageous parties, victorious in controversy, belonging to those spirits who have created amongst us a new mode of thinking on the natural existence of things. What he scattered through his writings on the philosopher's stone, on pygmies, the spirits of minds, on signs, on homunculi, and the elixir of life, which are employed by many to lower his estimation, cannot extinguish our grateful remembrance of his general works, nor our admiration of his free, bold exertions in his noble intellectual life. More than one pathologist, chemist, homeopathist, and magnetist has quenched his thirst for knowledge in the books of Paracelsus. Frederick Höflin got his theoretical doctrine on infection from this medieval quack, as Springle delights in calling one who was immeasurably higher than himself, Heman, who endeavors to vindicate the great philosopher and nobly tries to redress his slandered memory, speaks of him as the greatest chemist of his time. So do Professor Molitor and Dr. Ines Moser, the eminent German psychologist. According to their criticisms on the labor of this hermetist, Paracelsus is the most wondrous intellect of his age, a noble genius. But our modern lights assume to know better, and the ideas of Rosicrucians about the elementary spirits, the goblins and the elves, have sunk into the limbo of magic and fairy tales for early childhoods. We are quite ready to concede to skeptics that one half and even more of seeming phenomena are but more or less clever fraud. Is it out there? Yes. Are we going to encounter it? Most probably. Is there real? That's the question. And so, who after monopolizing perhaps for years a poor medium's time, health and means, suddenly monopolizing perhaps for years a poor medium's time, health and means, suddenly abandon him when he most needs their help. None but creatures without soul or conscience would be guilty of such injustice. Conditions, mere sophistry. What sort of spirits must they be who would not summon, if necessary, an army of spirit friends, if such there be, to snatch the innocent medium from the pit dug for his feet? And so, for those of you, I will say this, for those of you who may have heard, and I know I said words, and this is going to constantly be a position of change, but I begin to question personally why these spirit guides never interacted with me, but I have spirit forces that do. And as it always is, the force always brings the answer to the question that the heart asks. Not the question that somebody asks in their mind, but the question that the heart asks. He seems to dwell radically on the condition of the heart. And you find that all over the Bible. Why are there people who never hear from God and they get no help and all of this? that's a good question, and I think each one would have to work that out on their own. But I do know for me that I have no problems of having Source speak to me, but I can't seem to find and engage these spirit guides who are supposed to be constantly with me, helping me and protecting me. When I need help, they're never there. When I cry out for them, they never come. So what she's saying is that I'm not the only one who experiences that. So if you have experienced that, then it's a very good possibility that your frequency is already in a different place with the people who have to function in that realm, okay? And you'll see what she has to say about that realm. So if these people these spiritualists, these spirits that are supposedly going to help a medium, and then when they need help, they're not there. None but creatures without soul or conscience would be guilty of such injustice. Conditions? Mere sophistry. What sort of spirits must they be who would not summon, if necessary, an army of spirit friends, if such there be, ? To snatch the innocent medium from the pit dug for his feet. Such things happened in the olden times. Such may happen now. There was apparitions before modern spiritualism and phenomena like ours in every previous age. If modern manifestations are a reality and palpable facts, so must have been the so-called miracles and thaumaturgic exploits of old. Or if the latter are but fictions of superstition, so must be the former, for they rest on no better testimony. But in this daily increasing torrent of occult phenomena that rushes from one end of the globe to the other, though 2/3 of the manifestations are proved spurious or fake, what of those which are proved genuine beyond doubt or cavil? Amongst these may be found communications coming through non-professional as well as professional mediums, which are sublime and divinely grand, often through young children and the simple-minded ignorant person. We receive philosophical teachings and precepts, poetry and inspirational orations, music and paintings that are fully worthy of the reputations of their alleged authors. These prophecies are often verified and their moral disquisition beneficent, though the latter is of rarer occurrence. Who are these spirits? What these powers or intelligence which are evidently outside of the medium proper and entities per se? These intelligences deserve the appellation, and they differ as widely from the generality of spooks and goblins that hover around the cabinets for physical manifestations as day does from night. We must confess that the situation appears to be grave. The control of mediums by such unprincipled and lying spirits. Listen, friend, there's a reason why John tells us that every spirit must be tried to find out, does it. But if you're asking, and I know I went through a spell with a bunch of young preachers before I was even a pastor in Austin, of preachers who were coming up with all of these words that God said to them, and it was obvious that they were lies. There wasn't any truth in most of them. And so they, it makes you wonder where, are the Pentecostals just really prone to lie? And so they say words like, well, God told me this, and you go, well, if I can take you to the Bible and prove what you just said is a lie, then I know that it couldn't be God. So who was it then? And so even at that date, before I had ever been a pastor, I began to ask the simple questions like, well, did you do what the Bible told you to do? And across the board, categorically, every one of them looked at me with a face of stoop, no conscious knowledge that the scriptures would hold the answer or be the place where you should go to find them possibly. Now, while many of the scriptures are corrupted, the principles that keep jumping out have always been there, and they've always been, even when there wasn't where they were, they have always existed. The metaphysical principles are as ancient as humanity is, no matter how many billions of years that goes back. And so, one of the things when I was reading this, it says their prophecies are often verified and their moral disquisitions beneficent. And it's really funny to me that she would make that statement, because I can take you to Kentucky to a guy who was as low key as they come, Mr. Edgar Cayce. 30 years after she died, he is still accessing the realm. He wasn't a searcher for rich. Let's see. If Edgar Cayce wasn't searching for riches with the gifts and all of the readings that he gave to world leaders, then maybe we could find an answer there as to why people aren't experiencing it now. And it is, as that old guy on YouTube from Austin, Texas says, that you're not manifesting this because of the condition of your heart. See, you notice there that she covered every range. Prophetic spiritual functioning can happen in art. It can happen in every facet of human life. We have been so programmed that the spiritual thing was Jesus healing people. And it's really funny that our whole concept of healing is just like our concept of abundance. It's the wrong picture. The mass majority of people that I know that have a physical anomaly in their body the physical anomaly is minuscule if you understand the spirit realm. Because what it really tells us is that spiritually the sickness is inside. So, in Edgar Cayce's, their prophecies are often verified. That's over and over and over and over and over again. And their moral disquisitions beneficent, though the latter is of rare occurrence. He was one of those. Who are those spirits? What those powers or intelligences which are evidently outside of the medium property and entities per se, these intelligences deserve the appellation, and they differ as widely from the generality of spooks and goblins that hover around the cabinets for physical manifestations, as day does from night. We must confess that the situation appears to be very grave. The control of mediums by such unprincipled and lying spirits is constantly becoming more and more general. Does it not surprise you that everywhere you turn around, the cool thing that makes you someone is that you're now channeling some agent which nobody can verify, and yet you have these great long swelling speeches about how the universe loves humanity and how wonderful everything is going to be, and there's no need to worry about anything coming, but you have these simple people who are accessing the spirit realm who tell you just the opposite. I would say to you, dear one, today, wake up. You're asleep. You can't see it, and there's a reason for that. And so, some of the best mediums are abandoning the public rostrum and retiring from this influence, and the movement is drifting churchward. Anybody ever wondered why all of the, if you watch any of the paranormal things, have you ever wondered why there's never a spirit person who just walks in and sees what the situation is and does spiritually what's necessary to cleanse a house from a spirit that won't behave itself? What's the channel that you have to go through? She's talking about it right now, friend. She was pre-stating what you can watch on television every single day. If there is a spirit that has to be dealt with, I've never seen one that didn't have to go to the Catholic Church to clear that thing. That is a setup. That is a picture from the archons to keep you in the prison of you have no control. I'm sorrowful, but that's the truth. We venture the prediction that unless spirituals set about the study of ancient philosophy so as to learn to discriminate between spirits and to guard themselves against the baser sort, 25 years or more will not lapse before they will have to fly to Romish communion to escape their guides and controls. She said that 100 years before today, and yet that's exactly what they are still programming you to. Oh yeah, you have to go to the priest and get an exorcism. At a recent conviction at Philadelphia, no more than 25 years will elapse before they will have to fly to the Romish communion to escape these guides and controls that they have fondled for so long. The signs of this catastrophe already exhibit themselves. At a recent convention at Philadelphia, it was seriously proposed to organize a sect of Christian spiritualists. This is because, having withdrawn from the church and learned nothing, it really shocked me when I read this because it validates something that I've been telling you guys for close to a year now. And learned nothing of the philosophy of the phenomena or the nature of their spirits, they are drifting about. And for those of you that will get what I'm talking about, if you remember right, I told you that Christianity told you that there was a spirit realm, but they did absolutely nothing to teach you how to function in it. Why? Because when you are in the archonic prison, which is Christianity, you cannot let control release to those people who you are controlling. We're watching this principle in the spirit realm go on in the United States right now. I will tell you that the whole communistic concept is about control. The archons are losing control, and as we begin to enlighten and more people begin to enlighten, and they feel more fear for the loss of the energy that they've been able to drain, as that happens, if you could be one, you would be one of the people over there going berserk to stop whatever measures that you had to stop these people from defeating you. If you will take the spiritual and learn to understand it from the physical, sometimes it will help you make better sense of things. What is going on in the physical realm? We are watching the takeover of the United States of America from a spirit force called communism. And I don't care if you think it's happening, it is. That's why people who come here from communistic countries are scared to death when they watch what's going on in America. I had missionaries who lived in Cuba who told me I came to this place because it was supposed to be freedom, and now I come over here and y'all are worse than Cuba. That was 20 years ago. It's very sad, friends. So if you see things as gloom and doom, then that's a condition of your heart. That's who you are. That's what you see from the inside. I don't see gloom and doom. I see victory for those who will be strong and stand up and will fight and have a pure heart. And so you can watch that manifest in how people react and how they relate. It is a spirit of fear. Remember the message Dolores gave, that fear is going to be the thing that keeps most people from able to access the spirit realm. She was absolutely right. Emphatically, she was absolutely right. And many people can put on a tough picture on the outside, but inside they're like a shaking Chihuahua dog, scared to death about what's going to happen. And I don't care what happens. Makes me no difference. If they kill this body, they kill it. Big deal. I'm not going anywhere. So, but until you believe that, till that is who you are, you'll stay scared. And you'll stay locked in prison with every opportunity to free yourself. But you won't, because you're scared. So, I hope that you guys, I know we've been, and I could go on for another 5 hours, but most people are probably massively overloaded anyways at an hour's level. So I will say this to each and every one of you. You can either, you certainly have freedom, and I personally, not that I have control, so you'll do whatever you're going to do no matter what I say. But I hope that many of you will open your mind and will open your heart and will begin to see that there's a lot more going on here than we have the ability to recognize. It is perception, and just as with Sophia, which is wisdom, does anybody remember the little saying in the Bible? This is real funny because I've uncovered a little piece that is I think is already starting to work, because there's been a massive shift in the last week or so because of some things that I've been speaking into the air in meditation time, along with my and my quiet. But I showed you guys on Saturday, and it hasn't left my mind. I've been constantly, my mind is perusing it, that all of these things were given, wisdom and grace and perception, and all of those things were given. And then there were this second class of things that were given as well, second level. And that's really quite profound. That's really quite profound. It might surprise you that all the things that we are or that we aren't, we could be anything that we wanted to, but we have to do the things to be that. I hate to say this, and it's certainly not a condemnation to anybody, but the mass majority of people will stay just exactly like they are today. They won't change at all. They will change words. They will use clichéic statements. I came from working out in the world using very constantly horrible language, which was the norm. It still is. It's all over television. Then they wouldn't even let it put it on television. Now they say these words on television. And I was amazed that in less than 2 weeks, I knew all of the modern slang jargon when I went back to Christian Church to function at the highest level in our belief system, which was the Pentecostal Church of God USA, who I was ordained with. And it took me 2 weeks to learn their key words. Didn't have a thing to do with my heart. I just needed to learn the words that they used. And so, unfortunately, what many people are is they're trying to take some words and make them their own and act like they believe them, but in reality, they don't even know what they mean. You can't believe something you don't understand, and you can only understand something if you begin to look at it. The ancient pictures you see of thinkers being very studious and eyeing something, contemplation, those are metaphoric pictures of what we must do with ourselves. And so I hope that will help someone out there who has the right heart, but just no direction as to how to access this realm that is so present for us. And so I hope that you'll take that, and I hope that it will find root and grow and blossom for you. It certainly is a trying time, but I'm going to say it's going to be one of the most wonderful times. You're going to get to see things. I said this 30 years ago, so whether it's prophetic or isn't, it is, but whether it is or isn't is irrelevant. But I said 30 years ago that there's coming a time on this earth when we're going to see the things that all of the people that lived before us wished and dreamt and believed that they would see. And my friend, we're headed there pretty fast. So shalom and peace to each and every one of you. The force that exists and that it is all desirous for everyone who will. I'll leave you with this quote. Each and every one of you.